Doctors change lives every day, but what happens when life changes yours? A single injury, a sudden illness. Your career, your income, your future can shift in an instant. The best physicians don't just plan for success, they protect it. At Set for Life Insurance, they believe financial security isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. True own occupation disability insurance ensures that no matter what happens, your future stays in your hands. Because protecting your income means protecting everything you've built. Visit drpodcastnetwork.co/set4life today. Secure your future before life makes the choice for you.
Not a good look for our profession.
How in the name of common sense did this ever get this far? Vaccines are not seek and destroy missions.
Because he was so severe.
This is nuts.
One of the top 20 things that she has discovered with her research company, Progenobiome, medicine has been corrupted. Where we go from here now, I don't know. Well, it doesn't work.
So angry, punishable jail time.
Literally, this makes me believe we live in the Matrix. Like,
Deadliest year in U.S. history.
It wasn't a question of if, but when.
The first red
if it doesn't work and it's safe, put it in a little Fauci Pez dispenser, give it to the patient, and shut the family up.
It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
He gave Fauci an award for being a hero of the pandemic.
This has been a problem.
These were lies.
Let's talk about the healthcare professionals supporting this.
In the meantime, what was going on behind the scenes?
Irony of the whole thing is,
Harvey's 100% correct.
This is freaking annoying.
ultimately we need to have hope for America.
What is going on here? What has poisoned your mind? Buckle up, kids. Dr. Tim Hein Marsh, host of BS Free MD. 33 years of clinical experience. I'm the MD.
Yeah, I'm the DC. It sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? An MD and a DC sit down.
It's right. Yeah.
Walk into
an allopath and a chiropractor go into a bar.
Go into, what is this thing called? An infinity? What is it called?
That corner is, that is so, dude.
All right. You tell us when you're rolling. We'll kind of.
All right. Welcome to, I don't know, maybe an experiment called MDDC. My name is Dr. Tim Hein Marsh. I'm from the BS Free MD podcast. Been practicing allopathic medicine for now going on 33 years. I'm the MD with my new best friend.
DC, right? I'm Dr. Ben Rall, a chiropractor, host of the Design to Heal podcast. And we were joking about this. And this really is almost an experiment, but also I think even what you're seeing in healthcare right now, we've got to find a way to have these conversations. We have them privately, we go back and forth, we give each other crap, we tease each other, and sometimes we need each other's help. And we thought we should probably do this on camera because I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, can this even happen?
Well, the question I get, especially from patients I see now that are on sort of the, I don't know what's, I hate picking sides,
right? Okay.
But let's say team medical freedom.
Okay.
And they go, you think I shouldn't get a flu shot when I come out as an allopath in an urgent care? And that
which is your current,
which is my current world. Yeah. And they're like, how do I know who to trust?
Okay.
And I would reverse that. I think it's more, you got to start with, how do you figure out who not to trust?
Okay.
Because some doctors, I like to refer to them as Taco Bell farts, never to be trusted.
Okay.
Ends poorly.
And when we're talking doctors, and I don't know, maybe we should put some ground rules down when we start this. So, and I'm asking you, are you talking all doctors? Or are you talking your own profession? I mean, I think you could do it either way, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, I think it's kind of the Wild West out there.
In general.
Okay. So in healthcare, because, and I include myself in this, I was pretty much 100% team allopath until, the events of COVID. And then we start peeling the layers back. Now, I've always been fairly contrarian. I have my entire right arm half sleeve.
Yeah, I mean,
is a 10-year-old ode to be careful who you trust. because I've been calling BS in healthcare forever. I had a lot of leadership roles in my, prior life when I was a country doctor. And I was like, man, why are we doing the things that we're doing? Like, why are we succumbing to government pressure and to insurance companies and to pharma? So I'd always been asking those questions. And I knew that there was corruption, but I never knew there was corruption to the extent that we saw over the last 5 years.
Well, we'll start with you then, and then we'll turn it around later on me. But you said, okay, you're a team allopath, but I know a lot of allopathic doctors. I would still say doc, and your wife's a medical doctor as well, right?
Right.
So when you say team allopath, like not many people. I mean, that's when I first met you. Literally, I think I took a picture of your tattoo because I was like, I don't know many, and that was before COVID. So you were still asking some questions that not many would ask, willing to know those answers. Why did you even become a medical doctor? Like, what's the journey there for you?
Well, the journey for me was kind of all I knew.
Okay.
So, my dad was a very well-respected family doctor in Canada. I grew up in Saskatoon, which is a medium-sized prairie city, about 300,000 people.
Okay.
He was on the public school board. And I mean,
old school.
Yeah. I mean, he would do 4 or 5 anesthetics in the morning, and then he would have a full family practice in the afternoon. He did his own tonsillectomy, his own appendectomies, like real, the kind of Marcus Welby type on steroids, like true general practitioner. So that's what I wanted, and honestly, it's what I got.
Okay.
There was one particular incident that happened to me when I was an intern. Actually, I wasn't even an intern yet. I was a final year medical student. And I had just left the ICU, and there was a waiting room. And in that waiting room, you could look into the ICU, and you could look into the waiting area for the obstetric unit.
Okay.
And I saw these kind of 2 waiting rooms from this hall. And it was a couple, married couple, 2 married couples, about 45 or 50, and they were on the phone, and the one was weeping because they had just lost a parent, and they were, calling their kids, and it's like, he's gone. And I turned my head, and I could see across the other hall into this other waiting room, and here are these new grandparents, in their mid-40s or early 50s, and they're like, he's here, he's safe. And it's like, it's hard for me to even communicate this without getting emotional. And I looked at that and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to walk waist deep through humanity. I want the privilege of being able to share that cradle to grave experience that we have as a human, and use medicine not so much as a career of practice necessarily, but as a tool of connection.
Okay.
And so that
was genuine from the beginning.
That was from the very beginning.
Okay.
And that's how I chose.
So it wasn't, I'm just kind of, not really playing devil's advocate, Doc. I'm just thinking about what I think a lot of people hear or feel now. Maybe you're unique because you were second generation or something, I don't know, or you're Canadian, I don't know. But right, a lot of it in America, at least, it's, it's the smart kid in school that's going to go be the doctor, the social status, and that happens. That's real, right? And I think that now it's so much, at least now, you've been doing 33 years, you said?
Yep.
So, you have the ego and you have the God complex and things that we'll continue to talk about. And I'm not putting that on you. I'm just saying that story is rarer.
Yeah, I guess
maybe it's not. It's rare. I don't hear it very often.
Yeah, I think part of it is because, again, we have our own selection biases.
Yeah.
Right. And
well, let's talk about that for a second, because you bring this up a lot, and I think it's important, right? And you've helped me even see some of my own BS. All right. So when you say selection bias, and I'm not talking down to our listeners, I just mean like, give us what's an example of that?
Well, okay, so the patients that you're going to see primarily,
me or
yeah, you, like in your profession,
yeah,
are generally speaking, again, this is a generalization, are people that are going to already have either been disgruntled with Western medicine, let's use that word, or are searching for a more alternative or natural way to deal with their problems than a pill for every ill, which is essentially what Western medicine has descended into, at least from a commercial perspective.
You're okay saying that?
I'm 100% okay saying that. I mean, all you have to do is watch college football for 20 minutes, and you'll realize there's a pill for every illness.
Would you say it wasn't that way when your dad practiced?
Oh, it clearly wasn't.
Okay.
It clearly wasn't because...
So there's a real change, and so people that have come to maybe even the conclusion you've come to as a guy in it, is there's validity to their concerns.
Well, of course there is.
It's not just disgruntled people that don't like medical doctors. They have grounds for that.
Well, absolutely. And I can give, I think I know, at least I have my own perception of why that is and what changed.
Okay.
And
so the selection bias is, I'm going to see all these people, my people, again, generalization, but it's accurate. I do it, right? They come in, it's the, for the most part, right? It's the more naturally minded, especially post-COVID world, right? Holistic. XYZ had a bad experience with medicine, don't like drugs, too expensive, doesn't matter, don't have insurance, something like that, right? So they're in my world, and we share war stories, and we confirm each other. Now, just to be clear, their experience is real and true. It's just that's the majority of mine. Right? And then yours would be, what's your typical then? What's the opposite of that?
Well, the opposite of that for me personally right now is actually really frustrating. Because the opposite of that for me is somebody comes in with a self-limited illness and there has to be a way to change, to fix it.
Self-limited illness, cold.
You have a
RSV,
cold,
whatever. Yeah.
Right. And we've done an unbelievably great job during COVID to make people absolutely scared out of their minds of colds. I mean, if this has happened to me once, it's happened to me legitimately at least 100 times.
Well, you text me about once a week telling me you're quitting. Right.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So it's like, somebody comes in and they're like, well, could it be, they're 75 years old and it's like, could it be RSV?
Okay.
And my response is, well, it could. And why does that matter? You didn't know what RSV was until they advertised the RSV vaccine. And then if they get it, they smile. And if not, they go, well, could it be RSV? and so, this idea that somehow the pill for every ill marketing has produced a customer. Okay, that you produce your customer sometimes with the marketing that you do, has produced a customer that demands a result for every illness. And some illnesses are just inconveniences, and some are, incurable disasters. And there isn't a cure. And unfortunately, sometimes I don't even know who said this, but I know Trump said it during COVID.
Okay.
But you don't want the cure to be worse than the disease.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so that's the confirmation. What do you think? You said you think you know why it changed from, we'll just use your dad as this example, from maybe what that looked like to how we sit here today having a conversation like this. What's your take? Why do you think it changed? What do you mean you think you know why?
We used to believe Jesus that only the sick needed a doctor. Now everyone does because of health maintenance. The idea that you're going to do health maintenance with allopathic medicine is complete insanity, in my opinion.
How long have you known that?
Almost my entire career.
So that was early for you.
Very early. And literally I can remember almost I know the exact location I was. I was barely practicing. It was only maybe a few months. And one of my partners was writing a prescription for restless leg syndrome.
Okay.
And I was like, what the hell is restless leg syndrome? And they said it's blah, 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 blah. And then we have to, prescribe this medicine that's $250 a month, which was an anti-Parkinsonian medication. And I just went, I think they just made a diagnosis up to sell a $250 a month pill. And that was like
Doc,
this doesn't make sense.
Do you think you were less enamored with the meta? Because and I mean this as a compliment, you love your dad. He was a good, I don't know your dad, but he was just a good dude. Like you weren't so caught up in like the medical mania, like you weren't enamored with it. Or like, I'm just curious, because I still think it's weird that you had that perspective at that. A lot of people would have maybe fallen like your friend there at work who was going to just give that pill and hadn't even thought about that. I'm not trying to blow smoke at you like why you got it and they didn't. Because do you think you're rare in your profession? Or are you just rare that you talk about it?
I think both. I mean, honestly, as far as the people I work with, and like I'm really careful about how I talk about this stuff.
At your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a standard job, which is good. It's it's a great job. Like as far as, medical jobs are, it's hard to beat, honestly. But boy, it's really hard to get away from that pill for every ill. And I'd love to tell you that I never succumb to what the customer wants, but I mean, that's kind of how we're judged.
Is it real? Well, judged, and is it real that there is implications or legal implications potentially if it's a standard of care and you don't do it? Is that, or am I making that up because in my own head? Like,
okay, if you want an example, I'll give you an excellent example. I was at a conference. I was talking to a cardiologist of some renown, and I'll leave him out of the conversation. And he's done a lot of work in the medical legal world as well, so he understands that. And I was complaining because, I see a lot of old people in
How long ago was this?
This within the year.
Okay.
I see a lot of, elderly people in southwestern Florida. They have invented new ways to fall down and hit their heads. It's, pickleball, I swear, is,
It's the CrossFit of the generation.
It's amazing. It's orthopedic surgery. I think the American Orthopedic Society, they created pickleball.
That's funny.
So at any rate, well, they're all on blood thinners, okay? And so what's the most common reason to be on a blood thinner? Well, it's atrial fib, right? So the way we gauge on whether somebody should be on a blood thinner with atrial fib is a scoring system called the CHAD score.
Okay.
So you just go through the CHAD score, do they have hypertension, congestive heart failure, et cetera, et cetera. And then if, you reach a certain number, then boom, you get a blood thinner. Well, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing these patients that are like 92 years old with a walker, with they got a club foot on one side and, an artificial leg on the other. And I'm like, all you're going to do is eat crap and fall on your head. Why are you on a blood thinner? So because I'm sarcastic, that's my love language. I said to my cardiologist colleague, I said, I think you guys don't care if people die of a cerebral hemorrhage. I think you only care that they don't die of a heart attack. If they don't die of a heart attack, you win.
Okay, yeah.
And he told me, he said, fall risk is not part of the scoring system. If you don't treat them, have not documented the informed consent properly to the T, and that person strokes, the family can come after you. So I'm like, that just seems completely devoid of common sense. Now, I've looked for studies for all-cause mortality on blood thinners, and it's fabulously difficult to find. Like, honestly, the risk of a stroke from atrial fib may, compared to a fall, the atrial fib over time may still be a far higher risk.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have that data. I'm just looking at it from a common sense perspective and saying, do you want people bleeding that fall down a lot?
Right.
And so, yes, some of these, who's going to sit there in a busy practice where you have 10 minutes with the patient and not give them a pill if they meet, the scoring criteria?
And you put yourself at risk potentially.
And you're going to save yourself the risk, and you're going to save yourself the time of actually doing informed consent, which I think basically doesn't really exist.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to ask you this. We've talked about it even, but like the origins of modern medicine, allopathic medicine, how do you describe it? What's the timeline that, thinking about Rockefeller medicine, for example, or where do you started at?
No, that's where I started. I started with the Flexner Report.
Okay.
So the Flexner Report was 1910, and Abraham Flexner was an educator, and he started doing this survey of universities. He was studying universities. And then he started studying medical schools. And what was really interesting, and again, I give Rockefeller medicine probably a way bigger pass than a lot of the holistic people, because I think that there's a lot of good that it did. I think it's a tremendous amount of good. I think it was actually really good. It was just corrupted, but that's another story. So Flexner comes out and he's like, these medical schools are all over the board. We got, 200 of them or something between the United States and Canada back in 1910. And he's seeing, as an educator, all of these scientific advancements in biology, Koch's postulates, germ theory, all of this stuff.
All this is coming out for the first time.
It's all cutting edge, all coming out over the last 50 or 60 years. And it's just not really being taught in medical schools to a certain degree.
Consistently.
Right.
Okay.
So he's like, we have this scientific basis that we should, in biology, that we should be using in medicine, but we're not, it's like divorced.
Okay.
So Rockefeller gets word of this and starts funding medical schools. And then the AMA gets involved, and I'm not sure exactly how that connection was. And between Rockefeller and the AMA using, the weight of the Flexner Report, they start shutting down medical schools like crazy.
On the argument that you're not practicing.
You're not up to scientific rigor.
Okay.
And that's probably true. I mean, because they were all over the map, right? And so, but then it did something that was, I think, unbelievably damaging. Like the seed of where we are today was planted 115 years ago. And what that seed was it was centralized medicine.
Okay.
Because it was big money.
So you're saying at this point, you don't even say it has to be nefarious. Like you're not even going down the route that Rockefeller was the second Satan.
No, I don't think so. I
don't even need to go there. You're saying to find enough of a problem to be concerned about.
No, I don't think so because I mean, like, let's be honest, as much as I think we've reached peak germ theory, which is another story, germ theory was great. Germ theory got us sanitation, got us water treatment plants. Clearly sanitation, water treatment plants, black and gray water, sewage, like that's the greatest thing that's ever happened in public health.
And the argument there, so I mean, that's a fair, I think that's a good example of a truth, which is I don't want to drink sewer water and I don't want to sleep in it and live in it and cook in it. I don't want to do autopsies and deliver births at the same, germ world, to extrapolating that out to an unhealthy extreme, which is we don't want germs anywhere, anytime. They're all bad and they cause everything, and that's the only problem that we have.
Right. Well, we've had this discussion,
Yeah.
and I had this discussion, last night. I torment my poor physician wife with all this stuff, but like we don't even know.
That's why she's glad I'm in the picture. You can leave her alone and
exactly.
we can talk.
You're like a medical concubine. So it's like, but just put that in your pipe and smoke. So
I rebuke that. I'm not.
Damn it. But it's crazy because like antibiotics clearly in the last 100 years have done, I would reckon, close to, if not the most, for human longevity of any single entity in science. Because you used to, get pneumonia at 65 and die. And now you don't even get admitted to the hospital most of the time. It's a couple antibiotics and an urgent care. See you later. Have a nice day. It's more of an inconvenience. That said,
comma.
That said, we don't know if 200 years from now we'll look back and go, antibiotics destroyed the microbiome of every living entity and destroyed soil, and now we're just all a bunch of wafy soy boys that live.
We changed the killing pool. We created. I mean, there's a very real possibility. Well, let me even say this, and here's what I'm saying: if antibiotics, not to even get stuck there, but going back to the germ thing, if antibiotics are so great, and what I mean by that is, then we should just all take them every day. Well, that's stupid. That's not what you're saying, right? It's this, or the same thing. If chemo is good for cancer, then we should just all take preventative chemo. I should be on a preventative antibiotic, and I'm being, of course, tongue-in-cheek here. But I think this is where the, any strength fully extended becomes a weakness, right? All of a sudden, it becomes everybody's getting it, right? Ear infections are a good example, right? Most should just be managed with watchful waiting. Most will clear up, self-limiting, no worries. But they go in, and the doctor, and there's multiple forces in this. The doctor gives it because they don't have the time. The doctor gives it because the patient's demanding it, whatever scenario there is. So somewhere in that whole spectrum, I don't know what term you use, Doc, is, or where's the blame of overprescription? What or is there blame? How do you?
Well, I think it's the biggest problem with direct-to-consumer advertising is you're producing a demand, right? I mean, I go back to 9th grade history. I had this history teacher, Miss George. I think Miss George would, if she was alive today, drive a Subaru. That enough said. But anyways, Miss George always said this thing, she had two quotes. The rich get richer and the poor get poor, because she was a good socialist. And, so everything in humanity, if you look at history, because it's ancient history. And the other one is, which is more important from a marketing perspective, is if you've never had a McDonald's hamburger, you don't want a McDonald's hamburger. And so I think everybody gets sick, everybody has ailments. Everybody has, mental health struggles from time to time. But we've taken this sort of normal Gaussian curve of human suffering, misery, life.
This life experience.
And we've medicalized all of it. And that can only be detrimental, ultimately. The net effect. It doesn't mean that there isn't good effects in that, but the net effect, that's not good.
So then what happens is, and maybe we'll finish the Flexner Report, but just to sit on this for 1 second. What happens is guys like me say, screw it all. Okay? That model. I hear enough of those stories where I go, you know what? I don't even want to dabble in that system for me, for my own health or my family's health, because I don't know. I'm not going to probably end up with a doc like you, okay? That I can talk to, that I can say, hey, I'm not interested in that. That's even open. That's not going to make me feel guilty. Or I'm afraid I might even go in there, and the fact that I question you, you're going to tell me, you're going to call CPS with my kids, you know what I mean? Because they don't have a jab, and it's going to be expensive, and it goes on and on. And to your point of even confirmation bias or selection bias, what happens to me, Doc, after doing this for only 20 years, but I hit the tipping point where it's like, I don't even want to bother with that system anymore. And I think, to me, just like you said, you can see how it happened in your industry. I can see how that happened to the people that are in my world. Like, I think they came to a conclusion that's fair, and what I mean by that is it's real what they experienced, and their concerns are real, and they've decided to try to find a way to navigate outside of the system. And maybe the caveat we can put in there, just so we don't have to waste time on it, is I'm not talking about acute trauma care.
Right. No,
you know what I mean? Just not waste time on that,
Right. But again, it's babies in bathwater, right? And I get really nervous. Like I had an experience in Las Vegas riding home on the NASCAR bus from a NASCAR race back to the Strip. And somehow, I have a big mouth and I get into all this trouble, is this guy across from me starts yammering about something, and somehow he bonded because we were both from Canada, and he finds out I'm a doctor. I can't remember exactly the conversation. And then he says to me, what do you think about naturopaths? Okay. And
this was about how long ago?
Oh, this is close to, it's got to be 20 years at least.
So
20 years.
I would say come a long way. I don't want to put that on you, but you've modified your views a little bit. Okay.
But I still think what I said was correct.
Okay, yeah.
I said, I think they're really good at seeing people that aren't sick. That did not go over well at all. And I still think that that's partially correct. But I think that the converse is also true in allopathic medicine. I think allopaths should see sick patients and do nothing else. I don't think we should do health maintenance. I think we should do virtually no preventive medicine, not zero, but virtually none. This idea that you're going to go to a mechanic and they're going to maintain your car so it doesn't need repairs, that works in mechanics. It does not. I have not seen the evidence that it works with this. Yeah. Everything that we do that's preventive maintenance is what we do to ourselves. So this idea that someone else is going to take care of what I have to take care of, I think is huge.
That's what you meant by that statement.
Well, no, I was probably being an ass.
Okay.
But that's all, two things can be true at the same time.
Well, okay. So let me put it this way, or let me ask you this then. Or do you just not care? For the person that says, I want to operate outside of that system, outside of emergency medicine, and I'll navigate, even if it is a medical condition, a legitimate diagnosed medical condition, and there's a lot of assumptions in that statement, okay? A good one might be this, and this is where I think it gets muddy, Doc, which is this. Let's just use cholesterol, because you are a guy that kind of has spoken up about that, even with your background in traditional medicine, right? Like, What are we doing, right? The science doesn't justify some of this way that we are prescribing this drug. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, there was a big meta-analysis that came out in 2010, and that's when I started to change my point of view. I mean, there was like really no evidence that statin therapy, primary prevention did anything.
Right. So this is, I think, where we get frustrated. We go, but if I walked into still many places, I just had the other day, doc, somebody brought me in their blood work. Their cholesterol is all intents is nothing, right? They have no underlying histories. Their ratio's fine. They got everything good. Their total cholesterol was 207, and of course, the doctor said, if you don't get on Lipitor, you're going to die. And so it's like, right, ridiculous. And I think this is where it's like, so even sometimes, so I'd rather go at that, either personally or the person sitting across from me that says, I don't want a drug, even though it's a potentially diagnosed medical condition. I would say that holistic, now you use naturopath, but I think you can group us all together. I'm comfortable with that. And I'll let you start asking me questions, but like, I look at that and say, well, I'm not going to go in there and take a statin for frickin' that. So I'm not even going to go unless.
Right. And that's the problem. The problem is if they're going to, there's a seek and destroy mentality, almost a military attitude in a lot of allopathic medicine. And what happens is we get so busy and so, the demands in our time are so intense that there's this kind of knee-jerk thing, right? It's like C number, write prescription. Okay. My job, like, I'm a medical doctor. That's my degree, medical doctor. So it used to piss me off. People are like, well, I don't want to take pills. And I'm like, then why are you going to a medical doctor? We prescribe medicine. So, okay. That's
to your point. And so I'm serious. I think that's a good point. If you're a person that's watching this and you're saying, yeah, I'd like that. I don't want a drug. And then probably don't spend a lot of time in the medical system. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's really fair. The part of that I find a little bit almost funny is I don't want a drug, but I want a natural supplement that looks exactly like a drug in the exact same gelatin capsule, but it's natural. It has absolutely no, with even less ability to know what's inside.
And less ability to know what's inside. And also very real, and I'm okay saying this, many times with very limited research to support the thing that you're taking it for as well. And there might be some basic science about that said supplement, but there's never been, it isn't like you're saying, hey, we treated, now, and there's reasons why there's not those big studies, and that's a real answer, but I'm the same way. This is where I get myself in trouble in my camp, right? Which is, because I'm the same way. I'm like, don't take the supplement likely just as much as don't take the pill kind of a guy, right? Time and place for both. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about that majority in the middle where you got somebody on. I used to never have to coach people about getting off of supplements. I was trying to get them to take something, right? Now they're coming in on 30 supplements, and I'm like, what are you doing, right? It's almost like we have almost created a similar thing than what you described in your world, right? Created a customer. We're like, hey, you need this therapy, this therapy, this therapy, this therapy. There was some recent viral thing you probably saw. Some guy, I don't know if it was a joke or not. I don't think it was. Some guy who shared his morning routine, and it was 4 hours long, right? Of all of his health.
Oh, that sounds like Brian Johnson.
Okay.
The wafy looking white pasty vegan that's going to live to
that guy that's going to live forever. Yeah. Well, I think this was a big black guy. I don't know but a similar concept.
But it's literally handfuls of supplements.
Right. And all the rituals and all the things that you got to do. And I'm like, man, I just don't think that if it takes that to be healthy, I'm not into that one either.
Well, and it gets back. Let's. I mean, we could switch gears now to your side. Your show is.
No, let's wrap it up.
Yours. No, but I appreciate it, and this is one of the reasons why we're friends, because your show is designed to heal.
Right.
So if you're truly designed to heal, isn't that activity and food and kind of getting out of the way rather than you're designed to heal, but you're born with a deficiency of 19 gazillion. I mean, the fact that, and look, I take a bunch of supplements. I get it. I don't know how much it's doing what, but I feel pretty good. But saying that actually kind of admits that what you're eating is garbage. Because if the earth and the animals that are put here for us to consume as food are really good, then we shouldn't need extra stuff. Right? Unless you want to go down the biohacking thing, which is another whole rabbit trail to who knows what.
And I would say for this conversation, we're not doing that one. We could sometime. Right?
Yes.
But okay, so
how did you become a chiropractor? What was your
Well, I didn't grow up with a medical doctor dad. My real dad was a salesman, but the dad that raised me was a fireman. So just kind of middle class, Midwest, South Dakota, get close to Canada. And my mom was a social worker. And I would say, again, so I'm 46. How old are you?
I'll be 60 in a couple months.
60 in a couple months. So you got a couple of years on me, but I would say we grew up traditional, okay, which was still not much doctoring at that time. You went when you got maybe really bad, and I don't even know if I remember that. It was mostly stitches or you thought you broke something, right?
Right.
You did not go, but my parents weren't like uber natural type of people at all. But they also weren't, but there wasn't the opportunity to be a polypharma medical patient, really. I mean, you had to that would have probably been seen as a mental condition back then, hypochondriac. I mean, I think at that time, like the doctors would have been like, what are you doing here, right? And we were middle class family, so we didn't have the means to even do that. So I would go see chiropractors sometimes. I was an athlete, so the classic, musculoskeletal type of stuff. And then, and in just real simple terms, my mom as a social worker, I watched that profession be really taxing on her emotionally, right? I watched, she was kind of a person that would give so much. I mean, we were the family that like, my mom would just bring home somebody that's going to live with us now, right? And my dad's like, but we can't even afford groceries for our family, right? We have our own problems. What are you bringing this? And my mom's like, well, she's worse, so I grew up with this, wanting to help people. And my dad was very much like just a servant kind of salesman guy. So he was always trying to help people. And so I used to say always, I want to help. I want to use my hands and I want to help people. So like summer jobs was building houses and, stuff like that. And then when I had an experience in I had a medical experience, back to kind of your selection bias. I had a serious digestive issues. I was an athlete. I was a boxer. I was having really bad GERD, acid reflux, but like debilitating, couldn't really function. Went in, got scans done, upper GI, precancerous lesions all throughout, big bloody ulcers. I remember seeing the pictures, right? And I sit down with the doctor. I said, what do I do? He said, you take this drug. I said, for how long? He said, forever. Now, mind you, to your point, the guy sitting across from me was probably 350 pounds, right? And I was only, early, maybe 19, 20 years old at the time. But I remember asking him, I said, is there any like dangers in this? I don't even know why I asked that. And he looked at me and he said, I take one every day myself. Right.
Well, gee whiz, I wonder why.
Well, right. So now I didn't know that then, I was just, okay, well, that was enough for me. So I started taking them. It helped my symptoms. All right. My acid reflux felt better. My symptoms were better. Matter of fact, I used to think it was good. But then you've heard this story. If you've heard it once, you've heard it a million times, right? Then I'm starting having breakthrough, and I'm taking more, and it's getting worse. Now I'm breaking out in other areas, and I'm starting to gain weight. And I'm like, well, this is weird because I'm still an athlete. I'm still working out a lot, and my body's not digesting right. It's getting really frustrating. Can't make weight. It's shutting down my body. So on and so forth. I'm on this story goes on for about 3 years. Don't know what to do. I go see a chiropractor. Chiropractor, very simple terms, does what he does, makes an adjustment. Within 1 week, I get off the medications that I've been on every day for 3 years, get off those medications, lose 67 pounds. My acid reflux is gone, never to return. My lesions are healed. And it was like a moment for me where I go,
America spends more on healthcare than any other country, yet we rank 48th in life expectancy. We spend trillions, but 200,000 insured people still declare medical bankruptcy every year. Clearly, the system is broken. But what if there was a way to take back control, to break free from inflated costs and red tape? That's exactly why Crowd Health was created, a smarter, more transparent way to pay for healthcare. No middleman, no bureaucracy. Just a community of people helping each other when it matters most. Join the revolution. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use promo code BSFREE for a discount on your first 3 months. Because your health should be in your hands, not theirs.
Well, how come the doctor never told me that? How come I didn't know that was an option? How come we didn't investigate that further? And so then I started into chiropractic school, and I remember one of my professors, I remember him showing us a slide one time, like overhead projector slide, and it said, if somebody lives to be 100, medicine asks, how did they die? Chiropractic asks, how did they live? And I kind of just remember that framing for me of going, yeah, I want to ask the how they live question. That was more interesting to me. And then in the dissection lab and cadaver lab, that changed my heart from my relationship with God. I just saw the design of the body, and it just kind of stopped me in my tracks. I just realized this thing's incredible, all right? It's not so much about figuring out how this thing works as much as it is taking care of what he gave us. And that's been the lens that I've seen the world through and health through ever since.
So where did chiropractic come from?
Chiropractic, in the way that we often describe it, is 1895, a guy by the name of D.D. Palmer adjusted a deaf janitor, and he got his hearing back, okay, in Davenport, Iowa. Now, D.D. Palmer, interesting guy, was a magnetic healer, was a fish peddler, was Canadian, actually. Had this kind of unique, but back then that wasn't that weird. Magnetic healers, homeopathy, there was lots of stuff.
No, again, but that's exactly what Flexner was
trying to
was like, whoa, like we got to get this, like,
what works, what doesn't work, what's
works,
real.
yeah, like let's use the scientific method to kind of sort out what this is. So anyway, you could see why somebody would say this was kind of charlatanism.
It's not a bad question. It just got perverted, I think, right? Because here we sit now, I think, to some degree, the full extension of this, where now science has gotten so bastardized and corrupted,
right,
that what we call science isn't science. And we were talking the other day about, the amyloid plaque stuff and Alzheimer's, and that research really kind of being debunked now, or parts of it. And it's like, who do you trust anymore? So anyway, he does this. He thinks he found the cure for deafness. He goes around, adjusting people, and not everybody's hearing came back, obviously, but other things were going away or feeling better. And he's like, what's going on? And that's really kind of where the science of chiropractic comes in, where, the theory is, adjusting vertebrae, taking pressure off of nerves. Now, that science has evolved. It's not so much hard bone, soft nerve, as much as it's more just maybe a general term of interference or stress response, or sometimes we just don't know, right? We just don't know. And then that develops in, so 1895, here we are, 2025. So we call it chiropractic as really a science, art, and philosophy, which I think any healthcare is, but we are heavy on the philosophy of kind of what we were talking about, right?
So what is the philosophy?
That the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism, right? And then in chiropractic pure sense, master controlling system of that is the nerve system, which I think most people would agree on, brain, spinal cord, and those nerves go out and control everything. If there's interference to that nerve, that's going to make the end organ not function as good, or the end system. We remove that pressure so the body can function the way that it's designed to, in a purest sense.
Do you know what I find the most attractive about that?
Yeah, me.
Other than that,
just like
medical concubine. Other than that, is sometimes we don't know why it works. It just works. Mm-hmm. I think that we, in most of Western medicine, we have become so unspeakably arrogant that we forget that we're also unspeakably ignorant, because we think that the knowledge that we have now, we act at least like the knowledge that we have now is total knowledge. And we have absolutely no idea what we don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, again, 200 years from now, antibiotics may be looked at as a complete disaster.
Can't believe we did it, yeah.
Can't believe we did that one.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, who knows? Like, I'm not going to be around.
What we probably won't regret is clean up water.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
No, it's clear. Like that one, I think, is the lowest hanging fruit of all. Like, I used to think,
or moving our bodies, or eating real food.
Yes.
Like, those are gonna never go out of style. Having good relationships, laughing.
No, I think that's exactly it. I think that's exactly it. And I think you do a real disservice to your patients and your society if you live in a world that doesn't have mystery. I mean, we're both Christians, and you read the Bible, and a lot of it is just mysterious. It's like, I don't really understand why God did that, but he did. And that's because you're not God. And you mentioned the God complex in Western medicine, and I mean, that's very dangerous. I mean, we saw in the last 5 years what arrogance and ignorance combined can do. I mean, that is a weapon of mass destruction.
Let me ask you this as we kind of maybe we wind down this first segment here. Okay. What's your, and maybe we'll both answer this. What's your take on medical freedom? Because that's kind of what brought us together initially, is this post-COVID world or this COVID world where I guess I almost call myself a medical freedom absolutionist. I've never probably said that term, but I am a firm believer that people should be able to decide what they want to do with their health. Take a pill, not take a pill, whatever. Treat whatever they want to treat the way they want to treat it. No, I think there's a responsibility on the snake oil salesman to not be selling lies in healthcare, in allopathic, in holistic, totally. So how do you define medical freedom, or where are you at with medical freedom, or concerns with medical freedom, or do you consider you're just a wide open medical freedom guy too, or where are you at?
Well, I think where it gets really tricky is in pediatrics.
And I almost would say we could table that one. We don't have to. I'm cool talking about it.
Right, but that's where stuff gets. I mean, they had a very famous case in Oregon where I lived for 30 years, where they wouldn't. This kid had a operable cancer and he had to go to the faith healer, and the kid died, and so I think that there's caveats. I mean, there's exceptions that kind of prove the rule, so to speak, in all of this.
And I don't mean to downplay that. That's real, and I think we'll wrestle with issues like that till the end of time.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, if you really believe in liberty, I mean, that's what this comes down to for me. It comes down to a libertarian argument. It's an argument of liberty. So your tolerance of liberty is really your tolerance of letting other people do things that you may actually hate. Not that you just disagree with, that you may actually hate. So it gets very, very complicated, though, in healthcare when we have rules on backyard burning, even in the country, because you don't want to burn down the whole neighborhood, even though you want to burn your garbage in the backyard. And so that's the only place where I'm not kind of an absolutist in medical freedom are there places in healthcare and in public health where people's rights or their freedoms are infringed upon for the greater good? And the answer is, I clearly you can at least straw man scenarios where that's the case. How often that's the case, especially nowadays, is probably way, way, way less than you think. I mean, if we look at what happened in by the middle of April of 2020, I was still, Team Fauci, the whole deal at that point. And I was still like, I think we need to let all the young people get sick with this. We should encourage them to go. We should be giving them free spring break trips and get actual natural herd immunity.
Get COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I was way ahead of the curve on that, and I'm just a dopey country doctor. What if you had, what if you had aerosolized Ebola? What if you had, and again, I think a lot of these things they're more intellectual exercises than they are real scenarios. Because I think if you had something that dangerous, people are just going to self-select and they're going to self-isolate.
If I have to convince you to get it, it's probably.
So it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to paint the scenario where you go, okay, you got to take somebody's rights away.
So let's talk about then maybe that body in the middle that's 80 to 90% of healthcare, the daily stuff people are going through, that you believe a person should be able to choose how they want to take care of their health.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to set up a softball question there. I'm just, and you don't, maybe I'll ask it like this, Doc, and you don't necessarily judge a person if they choose to do something that maybe you wouldn't do.
I mean, that's hard. I mean, because I'm kind of a judgmental guy. It's really difficult to see people that you care about just not take care of themselves. But I mean, nothing's more obnoxious than trying to, get in the way of somebody else's choice.
Right.
And I think that's fine. If you want to spend a ton of money on medication and you don't want to, I mean, Does taking a bunch of diabetic meds potentially extend your life or your well-being? Sure. Is there better ways to handle that? Absolutely. But I mean, I'm not going to get it, in the way of those choices.
Do you think there's room, and you think that healthcare, do you think that we're going to get to a better place in healthcare?
I think we're going to get to a better place in healthcare. And the reason I do is I think it's all culturally based. And, it's the whole concept of politics is always downstream of culture, and culture is shifting. I have a Bay Hill shirt on, and when I was at the golf tournament a few weeks ago, I actually met a guy that works for an alcohol distribution company.
Okay.
And he's like, they're getting killed with Gen X. Or not Gen X, Gen Z.
They're not drinking.
Gen Z. So like my son's age, 25-year-olds. Their market is evaporating faster than dumping vodka onto a hot pavement.
They're just not drinking.
They're not drinking. So that's, those are people that are 25 to 30 years younger than me. That's huge. That's a major shift. It's kind of like what happened with smoking, 35 to 50 years ago, right? I mean, when was it, 1950 or 1951 when the first definitive paper came out that, smoking causes lung cancer? And, 50 years after that, we had taken smoking from, 50% of the population to 20%?
Right.
And it was purely culture.
Not science per se, not
Yeah.
some new medical advice.
Yeah, I mean, it was science, and it was good science, and it was non-corrupted science, but it ultimately influenced culture. And so I think that's...
It was also watching people freaking die.
Oh, for sure.
That says, that wasn't as cool as I thought it was. I don't care what somebody told me. That looks like it sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really, from a cultural perspective, it's very difficult to ignore someone like RFK Jr., where you go, okay, guy's like 71 or 72 years old. He's totally yoked, even though he works out in jeans, which drives Joe Rogan crazy, but that's another story. He's in super great shape. He practices what he preaches. He truly seems empathetic to the people, and has changed his mind, which is a really powerful thing. I think, we go back to the very beginning of this conversation, which is, knowing which doctors to not trust. Anyone who's never wrong is absolutely untrustworthy, in my opinion. If you can't admit mistakes, and I've said it, I don't know how many times on my own podcast, I reserve the right to be wrong, because especially when you're dealing with healthcare and biology, we know way less than we think we know. Yeah. Which means you're going to be wrong with some frequency.
Yeah. I wouldn't. Now, I've been thankful to meet you and become friends with you and your wife, and just really to kind of just beat this stuff up, because I think so many times, and this, I said we'll end on that last question, but I think this is the last thing I want to talk about, and then maybe we'll spice it up with another episode where we'll talk about some we'll get up in each other's grill a little bit maybe, but this tribalism, right, where we get in our tribes, and because it gets so emotional, it gets so frustrated. And my interactions with the profession, with the allopathic, have been frustrating, that I was like, I don't even want to bother, right? And then I met somebody like you that was still in allopathic. You're not like the allopathic that left, that you practice holistically, and I'm not anti that, right? But those guys I'm fine with, because we're talking the same stuff, right? You're still actively, practicing, in a hospital or whatever. And but yet we can still talk honestly and be like, all right, like I've called you before, asked you about situations. You're like, well, you could do this and this. And I'm like, all right, thanks. I'll let them know, or not let them know. They might choose to take it. They might not choose to take it, and vice versa. And, we pick each other's brains. But I just think that you're rare. So I think it's hard. Like I'm glad and I'm thankful that I have you as a friend, but I don't have 50 of you. And so for the average person, that's why I wanted you on my show, right? The average person, and trying to help them navigate healthcare. And I don't even mean integrative healthcare. I don't even care about the word, just, trying to figure this thing out in a high stakes game.
Okay, I wrote an article about this a year or so ago, actually before we met. And I called it Tools and Tribes. And I think that this may help people navigate that original question, which is who do you trust? And if you have like a problem, pick whatever problem medically.
Okay.
And you're seeing a practitioner. The question you should ask is this the best tool for this problem? Because we get into this tribal thing and it just gets really crazy, like really, really crazy. You know, it's like some of my metalhead friends. It's like, why can't I listen to that? It's not metal enough. And I'm like, really? Like you can't enjoy classical music or gospel? I mean, like that just makes it kind of useless. So we get into these tribes and we get so committed to the tribe that we forget that, no, the tribe is just a tool. So the integrative tribe is a tool. The allopathic tribe is a tool. None of these tribes own medicine, own knowledge, own health or science. So what's the best tool for, the issue I have? And for lots of things, it's going to be nothing.
Yeah.
It's going to be just waiting it out and letting my body do its thing and getting rest. And for other things, it's going to be, going out with friends and maybe having a couple drinks and laughing and forgetting my troubles. It's not Prozac.
Or go out, kite,
right.
Swim it, riding the bike.
Yeah, and sometimes it may be a chiropractic adjustment. Other times it may honest to God be a supplement. It may be hormone replacement therapy. It may be all sorts of these things. I mean, oftentimes it's a surgical procedure, and it's like, thank goodness we have surgeons, which still don't fix things. They still just put things in order so that your body can finish the job. So I think that's a powerful way to look at this whole mess.
It's a tool.
It's tools. There's different tools. And, you don't use a 10 millimeter wrench on an 8 millimeter bolt. And that I think that will help with some of the confusion.
Yeah. Well, we're still friends for now.
But wait till the next episode.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens.